The Gypsy Wife quilt by Jen Kingwell has 10 sections. Section 8 has square and square, square and square with courthouse steps, star block, and from the heart. Section 8 has another square and square. For this block, you will need 1 large block and 4 smaller blocks. Draw a diagonal line on each of the smaller squares. Place 1 in each opposite corner and stitch the line. Trim the outside triangles off and press open. And repeat that process for the other 2 opposite squares. And here's our finished square and square for section 8. The square and square with courthouse steps uses a center square, 2 sizes of strips for round 1, 2 squares cut diagonally in half to make 4 triangles, and another set of strips for the second round of courthouse steps. Stitch the first round of strips, small strips first, longer strips last. Now turn your newly constructed square with courthouse steps on point and place the 4 triangles around it. Sew 2 opposite triangles, press open, and then sew the 2 remaining triangles to finish this step of square and square with courthouse steps. And the final step is to add the strips to frame the block, and then your square and square with courthouse steps block is complete. The star block uses 4 fabrics, 4 different types of fabrics. There's 1 square cut diagonally both ways to make 4 triangles. 2 of those triangles will not be used. There's 2 squares from the second fabric cut diagonally once, 2 squares from also from the second fabric cut diagonally twice, and there's more than 2 squares. There's 3 squares for this one. There are 2 squares cut diagonally for the third fabric, cut diagonally twice, and then the last one, again 2 squares, and it's only cut diagonally once. The first step is to take the first fabric where there's only 2 triangles and 2 triangles from the second fabric, and those triangles will be stitched together. The 2 different fabrics will be stitched together, and then those 2 pieces will be stitched together to form a square. This quarter square triangle square will become the center of the block. Don't mind my chicken in the background. The next step is the same process using the quarter square triangles, stitching them together to make a square. And you need 4 of these for this block. For the corner sections of this block, we're making half square triangle squares. It's 2 half cut diagonal square triangles sewn together, and you need to make 4 of these for this block. Now, we all know that there are multiple paths to one destination for the half square triangle blocks and for the quarter square triangle blocks. We know that there are other methods. Feel free to use those other methods. I am following the instructions in the pattern book, and that's what I'm using for my demonstrations. For the final construction of this block, it is a simple 9 patch, so there are 3 rows of 3. The blocks need to be arranged as such, with the different color block in the center. And then this forms the star pattern, and then the final fabric points to the outside. Stitch together your 3 rows, double check the placement, and then stitch the 3 rows together. And here is the finished star block for section 8. The From the Heart block uses dark and light fabric to create this great contrast with the heart shape block. So from the dark fabric, there's 1 square cut diagonally in half, 2 rectangles, and 2 squares cut diagonally in half both ways. For the light, from the light fabric, there's 1 square cut diagonally in half, 2 squares cut diagonally in half both directions, and then 4 small squares. Assembly starts with the 2 large squares that have been cut in half diagonally. Place the darker on the inside and the light on the outside and stitch those 2 together to create 2 squares, and then stitch the squares together, and this will form the point of the heart at the bottom of the block. The next step is to make quarter square triangle blocks from the smaller triangles, and they are assembled so that the dark and the light are alternating in the square. There are enough triangles to make 4 of these, but we only need 3 for this block, and those 3 will be assembled as follows. So one of them is turned so that the dark is on the top, the other 2, the dark, are on the sides. Sew those 3 blocks together, and then sew this unit to the bottom unit. And to make the top curves of the heart, use 1 of the rectangles and 2 of the small squares to create 1 unit. Draw a line diagonally on the squares, and then place the squares on each side of the rectangle. You'll want to stitch from the center out on the diagonal lines. Press open, and that's what the finished unit should look like. Stitch the 2 units together in the center and then attach to the heart to complete the block. And the finished From the Heart block.